Hello, Canada. Welcome back to Canadian Citizens Journal. I'm your host, Alias Tagay. Well, we got some kind of breaking news here. It hasn't quite been confirmed. There's only been one article on it, although it's been sub-reporting on different outlets. But it does seem as though Barrick Gold is getting set to leave Canada. Now, a lot of you may not know, but Barrick Gold is a Canadian company. The original owner, I can't remember his name now, he passed away here, I think, in 2018. They know, everybody said he was quite a passionate Canadian. But regardless, this, you can call it the Trump effect, but it's not just the Trump effect. So media is trying to push this idea that it's the Trump effect. Trump is just capitalizing on what was already happening here in Canada. So yeah, Barrick Gold is, it's a huge company, people. Largest mining company. It's contemplating a move to redomicile in the United States, according to CEO Mark Bristow. In a recent interview with the Globe and Mail's editorial board, Bristow outlined several reasons for a potential relocation, including access to a more efficient marketplace and the ability to attract a larger pool of shareholders. So this is normal for Canada. People have been watching this for a long time, but I'm not aware if everybody sees how big of a problem this is. Now, on yesterday's show, I had mentioned that I knew personally of a lot of small businesses that left after COVID. A lot. And not just people I knew who owned businesses, but there were businesses all over Canada I was reading about constantly. And like seriously, 99.9% of them, they left to the States. The tax base is bad enough in this country. You start adding on the green initiatives, there's no way they can make a profit. Like I said, that all travels downhill to us. And if we can't afford to buy the product, we don't buy it. So a lot of the top brand stuff.
Significant news that Nordstrom is winding down its Canadian business. So the company came to Canada in 2014. So just shy of a decade in Canada. And it says that it just couldn't do it. It couldn't see a way to profitability here in Canada. So it is winding down both its retail locations. So it has several Nordstrom locations and Nordstrom Rack locations.
So these are huge companies. And there's, like, I was trying to figure out exactly how many companies have left Canada. And I started off just thinking, okay, well, we'll it took about a year and a half for a lot of the Liberal policies to start kicking in, but most of their business policies, it was on their second and third year. And they hammered certain companies and promoted pretty much the Laurentian elite. Now, in doing so, they closed down all the companies that never had any support. But then they hit them with the carbon tax. And the carbon tax destroyed a lot of these companies. They complain about the big grocers. The big grocers, on average, make 3 to 5% profit. This has been the norm for the longest time, decades. It's actually one of the lowest profit companies you can own. That's why the only real way for them to be profitable is to have chains. Those chains are what give them the ability to have the amount of money to invest good times and bad times. So yeah, you're going to get your good years, and yeah, you're going to get your bad years. But these guys are still only making 3.6 to 4.5%. And you hear Singh and Trudeau and them going off all the time about how they're ripping them off and they want to cap the price of groceries. This is completely backwards. That's not how you approach it. So back to the list. And by the way, Jagmeet Singh's brother, look where he works. So these companies are fleeing. Nordstrom, like I went through it. I couldn't actually come up with the list. I found hundreds of different lists, but I never actually could compile one entire list. And even when I tried myself, I ended up with like papers and papers and printouts. I couldn't keep track. A guy would have to make the software so you're not entering companies in twice. Thousands of companies have gone in the last 7 years. It's one of the largest exoduses of companies we've ever seen in our history. In fact, we're breaking global records against a lot of other countries on how fast our companies are either running for the hills or closing. But anyways, this one list here I found is pretty good. It names off a lot of the bigger companies, but a lot of this stuff you'll see they're the brokerage between the middle class and the low income kind of shopping places. A lot of the high-end retail outlets, they close down in the smaller cities where they can't afford it. But for the most part, they usually have a store in Toronto and a store in Vancouver or whatever, right? Kind of the head cities. But when you're talking like just the regular stores, Bed Bath & Beyond, Banana Republic, the Disney stores, gone. National Sports, gone. David's Tea, gone. Frank & Oak, gone. Microsoft, gone. I can go, this list goes on and on and on and on and on. It just keeps going and going and going and going and going. Now, mainstream, of course, like I said, that's all, it's Trump, it's Trump, it's Trump. It's not Trump. Like I said, he's a businessman. He knows what's going on. He's hearing businesses that are complaining and going down there. And he talks to a lot of multimillionaires, big corporations, especially now that he's president. Everybody's knocking on his door. So I found a couple of videos where they actually do a good job of kind of explaining what's wrong.
Talk to us about the issues that face the tech sector.
Yeah, it's very simple. Higher taxes means less capital available. Less capital available means diminishing ownership, and the multiplier effect is less economic benefits, period. So it's so obvious to everyone, Canadians should own a significant piece of great Canadian companies. It's so obvious. And now we are giving away our grand prize, the great Canadian ownership of great Canadian companies to foreign countries.
Okay, so I hear this argument. Mm-hmm. We've now had basically a month to sit with it.
Yep.
We have another month until it's implemented. Have we seen any consequence? I mean, are you talking with companies, because you're a VC now, who are looking at possibly leaving?
Yeah, well, perhaps let me summarize in one word. Well, let me summarize it in a few words. Loss of anger. Because we all collectively feel like the policymakers are forgetting the fact that we are entering a new era. We are transitioning from the industrial age to the information age. We are transitioning from tangible assets to intangible assets. And as a result, we need to own these technologies. We need to own these IPs. We need to own these companies. And we are kind of going backward. And it's not just an anecdote from me. I have all the facts and survey results to back me up. For example, a recent survey, which was done after the tax change announcement, 95%, I repeat, 95% of the founders believe that Canada is not the best place to grow the company. The numbers don't lie.
I want to talk about how
95%. 95%. Think about what he said. How many times did he say policies? It's policies. You've got companies here that are embedded, family, for the most part, liberal. We like to call them the Laurentian elite. Anything that those corporations are invested in, or the companies themselves, name brand recognition, Bombardier and all the rest of them, they have almost a monopoly. And the policies are made so that the government can say, whoa, it's not a monopoly. We're allowing competition. But they don't. Because these companies that are part of this Laurentian elite are getting mass subsidies and different tax cuts. let alone the fact of being guarantors of anything, where kind of like what happened with the COVID, not only did they own the media outlets that were promoting all of the lies, they were anybody who did a good job and listened, good soldier, got money for running commercials. Do you see how this works? They pay them off in a lot of ways. Moving on. This is one of the best descriptions I've seen.
But before we talk about that, we really need to look at how it's going and how it's been going here in Canada when it comes to competitiveness and attracting foreign investment to help grow our economy. So let's look at a quick clip right now, and then we're going to come back and talk about this.
We've seen billions of dollars in investment leave this country to go to other markets and invest. The United States is one of many that we've seen this flight happen. And many predictions are that this will accelerate over the coming months because of the policies put into effect by this government.
I'm going to guess any company you've worked for, especially international, gets a chance to make international decisions when it comes to deploying capital. What are some of the things that those companies are looking for?
Well, they're looking for stability, and they're looking for a tax regime that doesn't penalize them vis-a-vis the rest of the world. If we look at Canada as a company and America as a company, we have to understand that we have to continue to be competitive. And when President Trump announces that he's going to drop taxes to 15%, we need to think about being lockstep with him. I'm in the plastics industry, and it's very interesting. Regulations there have stunted investment in Canada. Stephen Guilbeault's plastics registry has really impacted folks in the plastics business.
Listen very carefully. He words this incredibly well.
They're afraid to invest in Canada because now all the products that they make have to be registered, like a gun registry or like a sex offender registry, which is really quite crazy when there's nothing wrong with the product whatsoever. It is just another level of regulation that makes business more difficult. So
that is Socialist Economics 101.
We've been seeing is a lot of movement to the U.S. in terms of investment, and Canada's losing out on that, and it's very unfortunate. And I think you can see it in the employment numbers that just came out.
So you did touch on this. We talked about people being reluctant to invest in Canada, but as you just mentioned, we've seen capital leaving this country, or even maybe deciding not to invest here anymore, even though they may have that. So based on your experience, why does this happen again? You mentioned excess regulation, and you talked about excess taxation. Are there other factors to this?
Well, for example, President Trump yesterday at the World Economic Forum said that he was out of the Paris Accord. Well, remember, Canada has...
Now again, listen carefully. This guy is smart. He's telling you straight out the truth.
A carbon tax that is absolutely massive. We are now severely disadvantaged because of that, and those kind of things make it much more difficult to build products in Canada and ship them around the world because the United States doesn't have a carbon tax. I'm not aware of any other countries that have a carbon tax like Canada does right now.
Let's talk a bit about net zero. I mean, this always was a bit of a puzzler for me. We've seen the net zero initiative with all the banks. We see a lot of the U.S. banks pulling out of that initiative that was initiated by Carney, who's coincidentally running for the Liberal leadership. Do you see more banks pulling out of that when it comes to in the Canadian context?
Absolutely, they have to. Yet again, what America does, Canada has to very closely follow. I really do believe net zero was never a good economic plan. It was a plan to suppress Western economic growth vis-a-vis the rest of the world.
There it is. There it is. That's Davos. Right there. He's on it. He's on it. He sees it. And our company's on that boat. But what they're doing, not only are they smashing our country with their policies, but in the same hand, they're trying to protect the Laurentian elite, because without the Laurentian elite, they couldn't have made it here on their own. They couldn't have made it here with just the WEF, and they couldn't have made it here where they are now, winning that many elections and squeezing that minority government as long as they did, without the Laurentian elite. You take one of the or the other away, and they can't make it. One of them has to go. And you're going to be hearing lots about this, and I'm going to make a video about this, especially with the milk cartels. Trudeau's going to try and protect him. He has to. I think Quebec is already tossing the Liberals because they're figuring out, they're ahead of it, and they're saying, holy shit, these policies, there's no way when we get to a trade deal with America now, because of the takeover, the Davos takeover, the Green New Deal takeover, that they'll be able to hold that cartel, which personally, I think it should have been gone decades ago. The whole fact that you can't sell, I can't go to a farmer's place and buy milk from their farm is, you think you're free. Do you really think you're free? You're not.
And it did that. Now, Trump has very clearly said that that is over. It's time for meritocracy back in America, and I hope in Canada too.
That's great. Well, when we come back, let's talk about some of the trade challenges and a bit about your experience.
So that's pretty much, he said it all in a nutshell. You've got policies within the federal government that stop growth from companies that don't show their loyalty, we'll call it, pay their due. And if they're competing with anybody who's been paying their due for generations, they're never going to get in. And then you have the outside source pushing a Green New Deal on the other side, and it's compressing the market in Canada. And now you've got all of these newer, small, especially in the tech industry, they can't make it. 95% said Canada, you're crazy. Forget it. Don't even try. Don't even try. It's not going to happen. And there's not even a guarantee if we get a different government in that can be fixed in time. We need to build mega centers up north. We got cold, like we got the perfect place to be building all of these techs, all of them, storage, Bitcoin, you name it. Why aren't we? Why will they? Unless the government completely subsidizes all the taxes of them, and then once they do that, any of the other businesses or the Laurentian elite are invested in, especially because most of them have been investing in overseas, are going to lose. That's not what they want. We're caught in the crosshairs of 3 or 4 different angles of getting blasted because of bad policy. And what does our government do? Our government gives billions of dollars to an industry that, number one, was never suited for where we live. The EVs were never suited for where we live. When you've got somebody like Elon Musk who'll tell you straight out, no. If you're in like north, they're great in the summer, but make sure you have a second combustion car. What's the Liberal government do? Hands out billions of dollars. As far as I can tell, and we're still waiting because they're not releasing all of the amount of information that they're subsidizing. Like I said, loophole and loophole and loophole. The Conservatives and the Bloc have been on this. The Bloc gave up a little while ago because they got their battery plant. Ooh. So now they're all hush up on it. But the Conservatives don't care. Doesn't matter which province, every single one of them. They're like, we need to know how much money you're subsidizing these companies for.
As Canada races to become a leader in the electric vehicle supply chain, some companies are taking their foot off the gas. Ford and General Motors are building fewer electric vehicles, while this week construction was suspended at a battery component plant in Ontario. It has some asking if Canada's EV investments are worth the cost. CTV's Colton Prale reports.
Celebrated 2 years ago, now construction on Umicore's $2.7 billion battery component plant near Kingston, Ontario is indefinitely delayed.
This isn't the only one. I counted 5. 5. And most of them are saying, we're just backing off. Either they're going to finish the build and not produce the numbers so everything will be smaller, or they just completely stop production. They're going to wait it out and see what's happening, or they're done. There's no way. And they're American, the American side is going to end up taking over what, instead of building and losing tax dollars up here, and especially with the tariffs that they're going to come, especially on the auto industry. I don't think Ontario gets it. They have no idea. They're in big trouble. That auto industry, they've been getting heavily subsidized. The unions have literally ran horrible campaigns. I know a lot of people that worked for the auto sector and a couple that still work there, completely different than what it was years ago. Those representatives don't represent the people. They don't represent the workers. All out west, that's pretty much settled. They're done. This whole NDP, they've watched it. It's done. But these investments, and the province is saying, oh, okay, we'll pay for half, or we're going to match this, or we're going to do. So now that province is heavily in bed with it as well. These businesses are dying all over the world. China will be the only one that'll be able to maintain it. And guess what? China is slowing production.
It happened just a week after this Oakville Ford plant announced electric vehicle production would be delayed 2 years, while it focused on making new models of the gas-powered F-Series pickup truck, despite receiving nearly $600 million in government subsidies to better produce electric vehicles.
Now add back to Barrick, if these guys, this is the largest gold company in Canada, if these guys leave, that tells you everything. If the largest company established in Canada can't make a go of it because of all the green policies, do not disturb this, gotta pay for that, gotta do this, there is so much policy and regulation involved. They can't get a shovel in the ground. Now, my personal opinion is if about 66 years ago, 64 years ago, if they would have started passing laws stating that the companies are responsible 100% to have insurance for any ecological damages done, this would never be happening. And a lot of these policies, they'd never be able to get them in because we wouldn't have all of the poisoned lakes and streams. We wouldn't have had it. These companies, they just lay over and they flee the country, and then they sell out. And, oh, well, we didn't do this and we can only pay for that. And, no, we got to claim bankruptcy. And then they claim bankruptcy, and 2 days later they open a brand new business and they're up and roaring again. They got to be held liable. It's going to be sad if these guys leave. This is going to start a domino effect. When the biggest leaves, it's not long before all the others put the tail between their legs and start running. I don't know what else to say. I'm in shock about this. Like I said, there's only the singular report. It hasn't been, it's not like they said, we're done, we're leaving, but it's something to pay attention to because this is, like I said, this is huge, and this is going to affect Ontario in a big way, in a really big way. Yeah, pretty shocking. Anyways, you guys, thanks for joining me tonight on the Canadian Citizens Journal. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed. Don't forget to share. And if you hit that notification button, you won't miss any future episodes. Until the next time, I'm Alias Tagai. Have a great day.